Welcome back. Still playing in cinemas, director Wang and writer Paul Auster's Smoke is a delightful ensemble piece set in and around a Brooklyn cigar store. The film proved so much fun to make that Wang and Auster, along with Harvey Keitel and other cast members, decided to stick around the locations to make a cheap and cheerful follow-up. The result is Blue in the Face, a charming assembly of scripted sketches and improvisations that feel more like a party than a film. Enhancing the party atmosphere are a number of star guests who turned up on the Blue in the Face set, having been invited by Wang and Auster. Roseanne, Madonna, Lily Tomlin, Mira Sorvino and Michael J. Fox all drop in, although the most memorable turns come from cult film director Jim Jarmusch and aging rocker Lou Reed.
I'm scared 24 hours a day, but not necessarily in New York. I actually feel pretty comfortable in New York. I get scared like in Sweden. You know, it's kind of empty, they're all drunk. Everything works. If you stop at a stoplight and don't turn your engine off, people come over and talk to you about it. You go to the medicine cabinet and open it up and there'll be a little poster saying, in case of suicide, call. You turn on the TV, there's an ear operation. These things scare me. New York, no.
Given the nature of the way that Blue in the Face was made, it's not surprising that some of its spontaneous moments were better than others. It's too short and snappy to ever be boring, but there are times when the freewheeling fun starts to feel a little forced. Still, fans of Smoke will definitely want to see it, if only to get another glimpse of Harvey Keitel in one of his finest roles to date.
So the Brooklyn Cigar Company is going to become a health food store?
Times change, Augie. Tobacco's out, wheat germs in. You know, it may not be such a bad thing for you either. I mean, maybe it's time you moved on too. I don't want to see you turn into an old man sitting behind that counter.
Everybody has to grow old. What difference does it make where it happens?
No more free cigars, huh, Augie?
You really should think this thing through before you let it happen, Vincent. I mean, yeah, sure, it's a dinky little nothing neighborhood store, but everybody comes in here. I mean, not just the smokers, the kids come in, the school kids for their candy. Old Mrs. McKenna comes in for soap opera magazines, Crazy Louie for his cough drops, Frank Diaz for his El Diario, Fat Mr. Chen for his crossword puzzles. I mean, the whole neighborhood comes in here. It's a hangout.
Blue in the Face opens here next week, while Smoke is still playing in cinemas. A less warm-hearted view of New York life is presented by photographer-turned-director Larry Clark in his debut movie, Kids. Clark's semi-autobiographical photographs explore such subjects as young lust, drug addiction, and the outlaw lifestyle with obsessive intensity. His first film, an explicit and uncompromising portrayal of teenage life, covers similar territory. The film follows a group of teenage skateboarders through one hot summer's day on Manhattan's East Side, staying with them as they talk, fight, have sex, take drugs, and party. Clark's main protagonists are Telly, a budding Lothario who only has sex with virgins, and Casper, who enviously follows Telly's conquests. Running parallel to their adventures is the story of Jenny, played by Chloe Sevigny, a teenage girl who learns that her involvement with Telly has left her HIV positive. From the very first frame, director Clark gets as close as he can to his teen protagonists, his intention being to watch them with a documentary-like eye rather than to pass judgment. While this sometimes makes for uncomfortable viewing, it also represents some of the most thrillingly assured filmmaking in years. Working from a precociously brilliant script by 19-year-old Harmony Korine, Clark has created a film which may not reflect the experiences of all teenagers, but it certainly sounds and feels true. To this end, he's aided by remarkable performances from his young cast, none of whom have acted professionally before. We talked to Clark about bringing up kids.
While I was out meeting kids in the skateboard culture and thinking that these would these kids would like make the best actors, you know, because I wanted to make a film using like real kids. I got the idea for kids, and I met Harmony Korine, who was 18, and he was in his last year in high school. And he told me he was a writer. He told me he was going to stop skateboarding and write and direct film. So a year later, when I got the idea for kids, I said, well, you know, it has to be written from the inside. It's too bad there's no kid writers, you know, because I'm not a writer. And then I thought of Harmony. I said, gee, I wonder if that kid was telling me the truth if he can really write. So I called him up, and he brought over this little 30-page screenplay. I read it, and I saw I could write, so I asked him to write kids. And he looked me in the eye and said, I've been waiting all my life to write this. So so he wrote this brilliant screenplay, and I shot the first draft. I didn't ask him to change anything.
All I know is that condoms suck, yo. They don't work. They either fucking slip off, or they break, or they make your dick shrink. Yo, we used to gotta use them, you know. At least I did once.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, though, you know what I'm saying? You hear all this disease shit. You hear this disease, that. Fucking everyone's dying and shit. Yo, fucking, that shit is made up, man. I don't know no kid with AIDS. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no one I know died from that shit. Fucking...
This was a film about the kids' world when parents aren't around and when adults aren't around, because kids, when they're with their peers, they have their own life that adults and grown-ups just don't get to see. They just don't have access. The kids will not let them in that world, and kids act differently when they're around each other than they are around grown-ups. And I happen to have access to this world, and I wanted to show this world that you never get to see. And I wanted it to seem like the audience was eavesdropping on something that they wouldn't have access to otherwise. I wanted it to feel like the camera was just tagging along. And I wanted to blur the line between documentary and fiction. I wanted to make it so real that, you know, you weren't quite sure of what was going on.
Good. This is your boy?
Watch your side, money. Watch where the fuck you skating at. Watch where you up, yo. What? What I said, yo. What? Forget it, enough. What?
I've been watching the kids closely, so I knew the way they talked, I knew the way they moved, I knew every little aspect of, you know, how they handled themselves. So I was able, like, if they weren't doing something right, I could recognize it. Like, if they were walking not the way they walked, I'd say, no, wait a minute, you don't walk that way. This is the way you walk.
You happen to have this dick?
What?
This dick, I'm curious. Do you have it?
What is this thing?
This dick.
What do you say?
This dick on this. Do you have it?
What?
This dick, man. This dick.
I don't understand you.
One last time, do you have this dick?
What do you say, this dick?
You said this dick. Don't you understand English?
I mean, I like the characters. I mean, they do, I mean, Telly, you know, is doing some bad stuff, and I got a daughter, you know, who's 9 years old, and I'll certainly have some talks with her when she's a little older. My son saw the film with me. I took him, he's 12, I'll be 13 this summer, and I was a little nervous about taking him. But it was, you know, he says, Dad, I've never seen anything like that before. You know, it's a good film, though. And it opened a dialogue. I mean, we spent like all Saturday talking about sex and drugs and issues that are going to be coming up for him like real soon. And it was just, you know, and because all that stuff comes up in the movie, we had the most natural, best father-son talk.
Jenny, how old are you?
16.
How many people have you had vaginal intercourse with?
1.
Were you protected?
No.
I just wanted to make the film and make an honest film because there's so many films about teenagers made, and like you know, older people might make a film about their youth, but they look back with such nostalgia and there's so much distance, and they bring in all kinds of stuff that wasn't really happening when like they were a kid. They glamorize it, or they bring in like all kinds of morality that they weren't thinking about when they were kids. Also. They make a lot of comedies about kids, which have a lot of the same stuff that's in my film, you know, sex and drugs and rock and roll, but they make it such a joke, you know, and, you know, film Clueless, and there's a scene where she walks out of a party, and she's stepping over bodies, you know, all these unconscious teenagers, and there's a kid thrown up in the swimming pool, but no one says anything about that. It's just a big joke. But if you make a serious film about teenage sexuality and this stuff that's going on, some people get really bent out of shape, don't they?
Kids opens here next week. That's all we have time for on this edition of The Movie Show. Next week, we'll be talking to Richard Gere about his new hit thriller, Primal Fear, and talking to Bridget Fonda about Rough Magic, as well as unlocking the diaries of Mr. Richard E. Grant. We'll see you then. Good night.